Today we're going to continue exploring the DMD codebase, specifically the test suite. We already briefly saw it in video 2 when we added a simple test case, but now I'm going to go in more depth. Whenever you make a change, you're expected to add a test case testing that the new behavior works. And also all the existing test cases should still pass to ensure you didn't accidentally break anything. So I'm going to open the DMD folder and go into the compiler/test folder. And here there are multiple folders, but the three main folders are compilable, fail compilation, and runnable. So in these folders you find a ton of D files and each one is a single test case. And in the case of these runnable tests, the file has to be compiled and run, and then the main should exit with a 0 status code. So if an assert trips, like this assert here, then that indicates a test failure. Compilable tests don't need to be run, they just need to be compiled, so they cannot have compile errors or static assert failures. Since running a test takes more time than only compiling it, it's preferable to make a test with a static assert instead of a runtime assert if you can. The last main category is fail compilation, where the compiler is supposed to exit with a non-zero status code, and you then use a test output block to test for a specific compiler error message, such as this one. Sometimes you need specific arguments to be passed to the compiler, such as in this test case, the -w flag is passed so it can test warnings. So then you can use the required args directive. Note that not only fail compilation tests may test for a specific output. This runnable test has a run output block, which tests that this printf is printing this when the test is run. You can also see how this test has an import, which is listed as extra sources. And it can be found in the imports folder. Right here. So that's for when you test something that can't be expressed in a single module. In the compilable folder, you can also find some tests prefixed with ddoc, and these test the documentation generator of DMD. So here's a ddoc comment, and here you can see it uses a test output file directive, referring to the folder extra files. So if we go there, you can see here the expected output of these ddoc tests in a HTML format. So now let's run the test suite. First, I'm going to build the compiler just like I did in video 1. I'm going to do a debug build. And this is enough to run the fail compilation tests, but the compilable and runnable tests also need to link Phobos, because it includes druntime. So let's do that really quick as well. And it created Phobos. So now let's go back to DMD and enter the compiler/test folder in the shell. And now we're going to run this script, run.d, which is the test suite runner. So I'm going to invoke it with rdmd and specify build is debug again. Because just like the compiler and the standard library, by default it does a release build, and so the test suite by default uses the release build to run the tests. And here you can see it's going. It's going rather slow though. And that's because if you see all these flags, it tries to run the test with all combinations of these flags on and off. But if you do a quick run the D quick, then you can see it goes a bit faster because then it only uses one set of flags. But still, it's going to take a while. And now it's going to compilable, which is a bit faster. And now it's doing fail compilation, which is even faster than that. Because it doesn't even have to link, it just has to invoke the compiler on each test case. Okay, so after a while it's done. And you can see there are some failed targets, but these are all D-shell tests, which we haven't discussed yet, but they test complicated things with shell scripts, and I'm going to ignore them for now. If I don't want to run all the tests but just the fail compilation test, I can specify that as an argument. And look, that was suspiciously quick, because it only mentions these tests which are disabled on Linux. So it didn't run all the tests, because the results were cached from the previous run. So I'm going to modify one of them real quick. Just adding some new lines. And then rerun that command. Then you can see it only ran this test, and now it fails because the line number of the error isn't correct anymore, which is shown in this diff with the expected output, actual output, and the diff. I can also list an individual test to run. For example, fail56.d, and then it's only going to run that. So if we're going to change this one, then you see it ran that. And it succeeded since it doesn't show a diff. And those are the basics of running the most common tests of the compiler. In the next video, we are going to look at some of the other checks that are required to merge a pull request. See you then.